So we will now continue with the conference presentations. The second presentation is actually in the form of a video as it covers a project based in Australia, and it's been recorded for obvious reasons of the time difference involved. So to describe the Hazelwood Power Station chimneys demolition, I'm going to hand over to Bartek Kokutowski of the Australian contractor Delta Group and Roland Alford from UK-based explosives expert Alford Technologies, and you'll be able to ask Bartek questions afterwards. So let's have a look first of all at the video.
Conveyor belts carry a river of brown coal to the State Electricity Commission's power station at Hazelwood in Victoria.
By 1971, all 8 units were up and running.
For 40 years or more, the life of this valley has revolved around the giant chimney stacks of the power stations.
The plug has been pulled on the Hazelwood Power Station.
The giant Hazelwood Power Station is closing.
The Hazelwood Power Station has been a landmark in the Latrobe Valley for more than 50 years.
As a result of this very significant closure.
The Hazelwood Power Station is probably the largest demolition project in Australian history. We commenced an EOI process on an international basis, and that was to get the best in the world to work collaboratively to deliver the project with the requirements that we set, safety principles being the driver. We then went to the market on a ITT, invitation to tender. And there were 7 possible selections made on contractor basis, and then finally got to a selection of 3 preferred contractors. The project is unique in the sense that the scale of the project was very, very heavily laid on with the disciplines that are strong run about safety, quality, performance, history, and obviously the contractors that met the 3 profiles, they were the ones that we went through the final evaluation process to let the contract. And we then got to a position where we were comfortable enough to award the contract. And the contract was awarded to Delta Group.
This is the biggest one that's been done. Obviously, when the project came on board, the whole country and everyone in our industry obviously was talking about it. Everyone wanted a piece of it. And for us to be engaged and obviously be part of that, it was massive. It was something we had never done, and I don't think we're going to do it again in Australia.
Engie took a decision in late 2016 to exit coal. So in some cases that meant divestment, in some cases that meant closure. But it's part of a larger global strategy to turn the business and point the business away from the market and more towards customers. And from a growth strategy, that means pursuing opportunities both in renewables and in energy services. The Hazelwood Power Station was really the engine room of a lot of economic growth in Victoria for the last 50 years. It supported a lot of families, and it supported an entire community. The best way to respect that legacy is to hand an asset back to the community that they can be really proud of, that can be useful for next generations.
At the start, it was all about the chimney stacks. We knew that was going to be the biggest process in terms of the approvals. It was going to be the biggest engagement with the community and the forums we had to achieve. We had to attend. We had to sit down with all the regulators. We had to sit down with the council. Obviously, the chimneys was one of those things that obviously was closely watched by not even the state, but even the federal government. We had to ensure that we can provide to them the right method, and we can control all the risks and manage them, that there is no danger to any of the community during any of the demolition processes. We obviously not just had the job to deliver the permits, the approvals, and get the method across the line, but we had a lot of work on site to do to clear the structures around the stacks to enable the fill. Some of the works that we undertake in the first year were clearing of fans, ID fans leading into the chimneys, as well as 24 precipitators set along just at the back of the chimneys for the whole length of the 8 of them. That was the process in itself. I mean, we're not talking about structures that are 5, 8, 10 meters high. They very heavy, 450 tons each structures with a reach of 28 meters. In Victoria, we are bound by a regulation via WorkSafe, where we need to explore every other possibility before we undertake an explosive demolition. That is written in the code, and we have to obviously prove to WorkSafe and authorities that we have looked at other methods, and we deemed explosives being the safest method.
So you see lots, you look on YouTube and you can see videos of chimneys coming down 1 or 2. I've never seen one with 8. To drop all 8, we looked at different sequences, whether we drop them all together, whether we drop them vertically, drop them in which direction, the timings, and all of that. And obviously you've got a limited amount of space. The number one rule is that we couldn't shake the ground too much. Vibration was absolutely essential because they're critical assets very close to the chimneys. And if we were to vibrate the ground too much, there's a control room there, which is critical for the whole state of Victoria.
So it was March 2020 when we had everything ready to go. The stage is set, and we now have to bring the guys from UK and obviously deliver the final stages to bring the stacks down.
A travel ban will be placed on all non-residents, non-Australian citizens coming to Australia, and that will be in place from 9 p.m. tomorrow evening.
We cannot shut down. We need to deliver this project. We need to go ahead. We can't have another go at this.
You just couldn't make this stuff up. We are literally on the other side of the world, and the border in Australia is closed.
And we had to start looking at plans B, C's, and D's. We had to bring the stacks down in the period of time, and there was no other way. There was no other option. There was no delay. We could not accommodate another time for it. And then we obviously had to deal with the dust itself and the asbestos from the stacks. Each stack was a 3,000 ton. We're talking 8 stacks, 25,000 ton, plus any coal dust within, plus any refractory brick. It's a heavy impact onto the ground and a heavy impact onto the environment that we had to manage.
So we had a window during which we could actually do the demolition, and that was based on the weather. And so we had to worry about the fire season and make sure that we were outside that, but also only a few kilometres northwest of the chimneys and the site is the town of Morwell. And so we couldn't have any dust going in that direction, so we had to pick a season. And so we were literally looking at years worth of historical data, looking at where the wind's going from. And we saw that there was actually only a short window during the year in which the wind was blowing in the correct direction for us.
So the output of the predictive modelling, the dust modelling, told us that we needed a set of wind conditions, an easterly on the day, 10 kilometres an hour as a minimum speed. So 12 days out we started looking at the weather forecasts and tying that in with the scheduling and all the preparation works that needed to occur ahead of demolition as well. I believe it's a first where this level of predictive modelling has been engaged in preparation for a FAL event in the licensing approvals process.
The success of the rehabilitation project generally counts in large part to how we leave that site. And there's community expectations and there's shareholder expectations that we unlock the future potential that Hazelwood has to offer. There's prime transmission assets right there on site. So there's some future opportunities for battery and storage. There's prime agricultural land, which is available for future development. And then increasingly, there's a recreation opportunity as well. But none of that happens and none of that takes place unless the site is left in absolutely pristine condition.
Well, fascinating video there, and I'm delighted to say that despite it being, 10 to 3 in the middle of the night, Bartek and Roland, I think you're in Melbourne, Australia. Thank you so much for being with us in the middle of the night. We have a few questions coming in. First of all, what was the most challenging part of the project for you?
Thanks, Alex, and thanks for being part of this, obviously, entertainment. Yeah, look, there's a fair few challenges that we had to face. Quite controversial in its closure, one of the biggest power stations in Australia. We faced a quite extensive planning process and approvals process to ensure we can bring the stacks down safely, and considering the degrading state of the stacks. We had to adjust our methods on how we actually undertake these works, including installation of the explosives, as well as being mindful of the impact to the surrounding community, mainly being the dust and asbestos present within the chimneys. From structural perspective, we couldn't remove asbestos prior to demolition, so it was then back to ensuring we can control the demolition in a way that doesn't bring any risk or danger to the surroundings. So quite a well seen project, obviously, and a lot of eyes on it from a state and federal government as well. So upmost was the process of planning prior to the delivery.
And then from my perspective, it was being stuck on the wrong side of the world, as it were, and not able to actually be here and oversee it and manage it. So we had to pull a whole new team together. So we had to recruit people, brief them up, and actually remote control them, really, from the UK. So we were managing it, and we had all the control processes in place, but we were having to do all of that from the UK. So the last couple of weeks, we switched over to Australian time, and we were sort of managing everything. And so it was very complex and challenging, very concerning initially, but very quickly we built up confidence as we realized the caliber of the people that we had actually managed to recruit. But taking one of the biggest demolitions you've ever done and putting it into the hands of people you've never actually met is a leap of faith, shall we say.
I think we're all getting used to doing exciting things remotely in the world we live in. Just the final question, what were the innovations that were part of this project? What would you think were the particularly exciting innovations?
Well, there were something explosively where we just went back to the drawing board, first of all, with our calculations. So I think our structural engineers did a fantastic job of calculating. With a chimney, it's always about when the heel of the chimney collapses. So when the back of it fails under compression, you take out the front. And that dictates exactly where you're going to put the pivot. And so doing that, we created some very neat and some very, very, very clever mathematics to actually work out exactly where to do that, so that we get the rotation in advance before it dropped vertically. And once you've got that rotation, you're guaranteed it's going and it's not going to sit down. And I think that we really did some new stuff there. So I was very proud of that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being up in the middle of the night. You can go back to bed now in Melbourne, Australia. We really appreciate you being with us from the other side of the world. Thank you to both of you, Bartek and Roland.